Hello and welcome back. I'm both disappointed that I have to talk about universal design because I wish it was something everyone already understood, because as we'll see, it's super helpful to everyone, and I'm really excited to talk about it because this is a part of design that I'm really keen on. So today we're going to talk in surprisingly, I know if you look at the timestamp, it's going to seem really long, the time, but this is actually relatively brief. What universal design is, why it's important to you, your family, especially if you have. It's important to everyone, but why it is important, especially to families with individuals who have various disabilities or other special needs, as well as what some examples of universal design are and how can both average people and businesses keep it in mind going forward at this time. So, as we'll see, again, this is an important topic to families of friends of everyone who has a disability of some form or another. It is important to everyone also who wants to grow old, but we'll get to that as we get farther along too. And everyone who wants to age in place again in the future. So these are important topics. Let's dive into it. So, what is universal design? So, universal design is the practice of designing and implementing physical, architectural, and engineered design and purposing of spaces so that they work for and enable all people of all ability levels without segregating individuals to different areas or paths based upon their ability levels, any disabilities, etc. So, one example of this, which we'll go into more detail in about later when we talk about examples that you've seen that have been around for a long time, is moving pathways and walkways in airports. They help everyone. They don't stop you. You can use them whether or not you have a wheelchair, whether or not you're on crutches, whether or not you're old, young, middle-aged, whether or not you're physically fit or not, whether or not you're awake or tired. Doesn't matter. Everyone can use them. They're there for anyone and everyone. And you don't have to move somehow away from the normal flow of traffic. It's all part of the normal flow of traffic to use them or not use them. And that's part of universal design. I'm not saying airports necessarily use universal design, but that is one example of a piece of universal design. So another way to look at it is that universal design aims to target the universal needs of individuals so that they can go through life naturally and safely in a space regardless of age, disability, or physical ability. And now something I have neglected to mention thus far is that universal design is not just engineered in the physical, architectural, and engineered space. It is, I would argue that there's also intellectual and training components to it. However, for now, it will suffice in this video to focus on purely the accessible end of things for this time. Again, we're trying to be succinct as possible in this video, and there's a lot more to universal design than I will get to in this video today. And there's a lot more that can help families and all of you than I will get to in this video today. And we'll go into some things that will be helpful in other videos and ways that you can use some of these things in your home again in other videos. Anywho, I've digressed. Back on topic. So, let's get on to why this is important to you and your family. So, universal design is important to everyone. Absolutely everyone. And we'll get to the everyone part first, and then we'll move on to why it's also important, even more so, to individuals and families of individuals who care, and friends who care, and people in general who care for individuals with various disabilities. So first we'll talk about why it's important to everyone, even if they don't have a disability, and why, thus, it's important to everyone when we get to the part about anyone who cares about someone with a disability. You'll see. So, according to the United States Census Bureau of the United States of America, civilian public population, about 13.4% have a disability according to a 2022 community survey. That's over 1 out of 10 people. That's 13 out of 100 people. Almost 4, that's 13. That's 134 out of 1,000 people. Statistically. This is slightly below the estimates of a global average of 16% according to the World Health Organization. Additionally, from the United States Social Security Administration, on an actuarial note released in 2022, again, for those of you who don't know, actuarials are individuals who get paid a lot of money to do complex statistical computations for things like risk. So these are federal employees who are paid a lot of money to do federal risk-based analysis. And so they came up with that for individuals who turned 20 in 2022, so those who were born in 2002, the chance of gaining a disability for 90 days or more by the time they turned 67, if they didn't have one before, and surviving, was about 24.5%, within statistical reason, give or take. So with the rates being higher if you were born before 2002. So if you turned 20 before 2022. And risks of death or getting disabled and dying being not included in those numbers before you turn 67. Now, I'm not a gambling man, but I do have spent a lot of time studying mathematics and have a degree in one. That's a pretty high chance. That's almost 2 coin flips. And that's not a great chance of getting disabled. 24.5% chance by the time, for someone who's younger than me, by the time they hit 67, which they consider the age of retirement, but I think that's sort of a funny joke, and I think that's sort of laughable, and they're great comedians. I don't think most people who were born before 2022 expect to retire at 67. At least I don't. However, that's a high chance just by retirement to become disabled. 24.5%. Now, that's not to mention if you want to stay in a home we own past age of retirement. And we'll see why that's important. So I don't know how many of you have paid attention to people over the age of, say, 70, but a lot of them start to lose things like mobility and other impacting factors to being self-sufficient. You can't do many things by yourself. It's harder to get cans out of shelves. It's harder to open drawers. It's harder to go about your daily life because you're limited by your environment and how things are constructed. Just how your house is constructed, how buildings in towns and cities are constructed, how sidewalks are constructed, everything. It all impacts that freedom, that autonomy, and we pay out the nose for that in taxpayer dollars, believe it or not. It also costs individuals a lot as far as mental health and time and concern and worry for ourselves and for our family members that we care about. And similarly, if you're like me, who has children or parents or other family members that you care about that have disabilities, whether they're physical ability or a body shape that's not... that the United States is currently not designing for, then universal design will make sure that the space you occupy will work better for you or for them, not just now, but into the future. And it will help more statistically help create an environment that provides a better suited space for autonomy. It also supports advocacy of those designs and practices to ensure that they won't need special cases of treatment to access public locations outside of the house when they travel. And you won't necessarily need to have as many people being escorted to access spaces because they'll be able to access them better themselves. And so this is a point where it would be pertinent to point out that universal design isn't about making a space immune to danger. You can't really do that. There's always going to be some risk of people climbing, people opening drawers or windows, or you're not going to be able to stop creative minds. You're not going to be able to stop individuals who are vertically skilled or things like that. It can create better safety. There can be better safety situations in place, special things on drawers or doors or things that help. And that's okay. It isn't about imprisonment. It isn't about containing people. It's about giving people freedom and space. Now, if you're looking for things like safety, that can be an accessibility thing, where if it helps people stop elopement, that's more of an, special situations of special design to help people stay safe. That's a different thing that we'll also talk about in other videos. So those are important topics for individuals who have things like elopement risk or self-injurious risk and things like that. Those are important topics, and we will get to those. I don't want, for those of you who live with situations like that or live with people who have that as part of their reality, I don't want you to think that those are not topics that won't be discussed and are not important. They are important. They will be discussed. Not in this video, but they will be discussed. And not necessarily part of universal design, but they are important. They can be part of universal design, potentially, depending on... I digress. Anyway, so moving on. All right, so what are some examples of universal design? Let's talk about a few. First, we'll cover some that you've probably already seen, most likely have seen, potentially are more likely to have seen or thought about, and then we'll cover some examples that exist that either you haven't seen or you haven't really thought about, probably haven't noticed. An easy one is that you've definitely seen and gets talked about online in cartoons and comics as being an accessibility feature, but is also a part of universal design constantly: ramps. These are among the most common forms of universal design. They make spaces accessible to everyone regardless of their mobility needs, and everyone can use them and the spaces they're in and those that they connect. They're helpful. You can walk on them, and you can use wheelchairs, power chairs, crutches, lots of things on them. They're super helpful for making a space accessible and universal. Another common universal design idea that you're probably familiar with that we mentioned earlier is moving walkways, like those seen at airports. They allow movement over longer distances to be easier for everyone. Do you have a wheelchair? Scoot onto the walkway and let it help move you across. Have kids and tired from wrangling them? Lasso them onto the path and help it move all of you down the path. Have you just been walking and you just want to have something move you without you having to exert yourself? Sure, just step on the path. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're, Joe Black from down the street. You can hop onto the moving walkway and it will help slide you. It doesn't matter who you are. It'll move you, and it doesn't matter whether or not you have a disability or something else going on. It's there for you. It's energy saving. It doesn't single you out. It doesn't do anything to segregate you. It's just there to help everyone. It's great. And so, since I've touched on two movement-based universal design elements, how about some that aren't? Before we move on, that are common, before we move on to some that aren't as common. So for a common one that you probably don't think about, but it's been around for a while, are Braille signs and other Braille forms of written text in places to help individuals who have visual blindness, whether it's legally blind or visual impairment, whether it's temporary or permanent, to be able to read better because they don't have to read some raised text that's written in English or Spanish or French, or they can read Braille, which is written to be more easily read. It was developed, and it's wonderful. It's awesome, and it's developed, and it works better than any written language ever could for that, besides Braille, as far as I know that we've ever discovered. And that's awesome. And Braille is greatly useful for its purpose, and utilizing it in spaces helps. Another one that's growing commonality is spoken notifications. These come in a variety of forms and are super helpful to a variety of people. One example of this is talking crosswalks. So you might hear notifications at crosswalks that say things like crosswalk is on at, usually you hear it say crosswalk is on at all crossings, or crosswalk is on at, and then it lists off a street. And whatever it's on at. And it's a great way to let individuals who struggle with attention or struggle with noticing that the crosswalk is on. It helps individuals who are legally blind. It helps individuals who have distractions. It helps lots of people, and it doesn't single you out because it's there. And that's awesome. And another similar example is talking fire alarms. So these don't just scream, they talk instead of scream. The sound, that sound. And as someone whose body feels visceral pain from that sound, talking fire alarms can be helpful for me, even though I know what that sound means. The sound causes me extreme physical pain, but I know what it means, and I can find my way a little more coherently when I have talking fire alarms. And it can also put out other information than just an alarm. With these talking fire alarms, you can put out information like, is it a CO2 alarm? Is it a fire alarm? You can have it put out information if it's a more complex input mechanism where it takes in more complex readings. It can output more complex information audibly, which can be helpful to not only those who are trying to leave a space, but also those who are arriving and trying to figure out what's going on and where as they navigate a building, which is cool. So finally, one I don't think about very often unless we encounter it that's super helpful is the presence of handles on doors instead of doorknobs. Yeah, you heard me right. Handles. So, when you have a lever on a door instead of a knob, that is a form of universal design. So when there's no buttons to automate door operation, like the handicap buttons, that can be operated without using, fingers to grasp a doorknob, you can use your elbows and you can open a door with a lever, without using finger-based dexterity, which makes it universally designed. So people who don't have finger dexterity can open a door that has a lever-based handle. And that's awesome. And for me, it can make difference when I'm having trouble with my fingers. When I'm having flare-up days, I can open doors that have levers more easily without using my fingers and without drawing attention to myself. And while I don't actively think about it while I'm doing it, it's not drawing attention to me, I guess it's sort of nice. So there's that. And now that we've gone through some of the common instances, what are some less encountered situations, you might be wondering? Let's dive into those. Firstly, there's accessible counters. And this means that, for example, wheelchairs and power chairs can roll right up to the counter in public spaces that can nestle themselves right underneath usually. And it also means having height adjustable tables, which people benefit from whether they're in wheelchairs, power chairs. It benefits people who are above the average height because you can move the desk or table up if you're taller and it's at a height that's more comfortable for you. And you can also move it lower if you're an individual who is below average height and you need the table or counter lower so that it's something that works better for you at your height, which is great. And that's better for your body ergonomically so that your spine sits better and it's going to cause less damage to you, even if it's just temporarily in the moment. You're just going to feel more comfortable and more at ease in the space. And it's nice. It's a small thing, but it makes a difference, and helps you feel more comfortable where you are. And that's really, it's a benefit that it's hard to explain to someone unless you've been there. And it's just nice to feel like you can fit somewhere. Secondly is low carpeting. Yep, low carpeting. You see it in office places sometimes. It's actually beneficial. Woods, tiles, vinyls, similar floorings like that, they look nice. I don't know many people who would argue against that they perhaps might look better than carpeting most of the time. However, carpeting provides extra grip for individuals with stability difficulties. Crutches, walkers, even wheelchairs can benefit from low carpeting sometimes with the extra grip that it provides, especially on sloped surfaces. You can have some other materials that are textured in ways that benefit. It is easier overall to provide low carpeting to help individuals with mobility aids as an added layer of control for them and precision, to give them an extra layer of precision when they move through the space. And a third and final for this moment, general example for this video, is accessible showers and tubs. So you might not think about these much, but they have been around for a while in various forms. And they aren't exactly new, like I said. They range in variety, and the general public support for showers and tubs that are able to serve universal design needs has grown a lot in recent years. And they have had a large number of increases in changes in how they've looked, in the specialized ones, and actually there's currently, and at least I've seen a lot of design promotion for open walk-in showers. And these benefit individuals who have mobility issues. They can look really nice. You can tell that because they're big in the design world right now. Big open showers look really nice. And you can have easily in that space handles or things like that benefit individuals with mobility difficulties, or you can set them up so that there's there's usable benches or things like that integrate into the space well, so that individuals who need help washing or need support to sit or things like that can have things integrated into the space that looks nice if they want it that way, and also provides the adequate support, stabilization, like handles or bars, extra storage, integrated height and space and things that you need, in a way that you can get the help, or you can move mobility aids in there or out without difficulty, and with it looking nice and having all of that space there. And that's an option. And it looks nice too. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize about universal design, or when they talk about accessible design, which is the precursor to universal design, is that it can look nice too. People think that it's limiting, that it's stifling. It can look nice too. So, now that we've talked about what it is, how can we, as individuals, families, and business leaders, utilize, before it's law, utilize ideas of universal design, in other words, accessibility, to best help those that we care about, those that we want to serve. And I know many businesses are probably curious to improve their bottom line, and how does it impact bottom line. So I'll tackle that last one first. While the topic of focusing on money and profitability can seem cold, especially when you're dealing with the ability of individuals to be able to integrate into a space, the truth is it actually follows naturally. If you care for people, if you open your doors to more people will come to you, especially right now in America, where a lot of businesses aren't designed to be universally open, aren't designed to be accessible. If you make yourself accessible, simply care for people, people notice and talk about you. Your doors will have more people coming through, because people will talk about the fact that you care about people and that they can actually get into your business and that they can use your business, and that will mean something to them. And so that will make a difference. People will be more likely to buy from you, and they'll be more likely to talk about you. If it gets out that you have designs that benefit everybody, it's gonna get you traffic. It's simple. If you care, people will care back. Okay? And now there's currently only a single conference in the world that I could find for universal design. And that said, it's not in America. It's elsewhere. You can find products, designs, and talks and more about products and ideas around and about universal design and accessibility at other expos, through other groups, and through other advocacy groups. We'll talk about it and fight for it a little bit here and there, and conferences about various trade groups or design-based conferences. Still, that doesn't help the average person or the average business owner very much, who's basically left trying to figure this stuff out on their own. And that's why I'm here. So thankfully, now you've heard about it, so you can do a little bit more research about it and learn a little bit more about it and other accessibility things. And I'll drop some ideas now, and we'll get more info into your hands going forward, more ideas, more tips and tricks. I'll even create a playlist that you can look at, with this being the first video. And specialized design, which is taking universal design and adding on to it things that are specialized to help individuals, to help a specific targeted group or specific targeted individual. That universal design is made to be universal, not specialized. So specialized design would be to talk about and help a specific individual or group of individuals with even more specialized help and needs. And so I want to make sure that you have the tools in your hands, the information, and whatever I can get into your hands to help you be able to best help yourself, those you care about, your family, your friends, and those you serve. So we've already briefly talked about ramps, carpets, specialized showers, tubs, brails, broken alarms, and the like. There's also, we briefly talked about surfaces, but there's also specifically in those surfaces and counters, there's kitchen counters. And we talked about wheelchair accessible counters at, say, hotels and businesses, but you can find them for your home as well. You can find wheelchair accessible bathroom counters, wheelchair accessible kitchen counters that are, one, they're at a height that works better with the average individual who sits in a wheelchair or power chair. They're also designed so you can pull a wheelchair or power chair up to them, similar to a regular chair, even up to them, similar to a vanity. Which is one thing that's nice about them, is they actually end up looking a little bit like they end up looking a lot like a vanity, actually. So you have your sink, and you can wheel up right up to the sink like a vanity, and it's really nice. I think they're nice. I think they look nice. And I'm not an individual with a wheelchair or power chair, so I can imagine how much nicer it feels to be able to be able to pull up to something that is not only now accessible, that wasn't easily accessible before, and be able to use something like a sink in a way that, after it's been changed into a way that's accessible, and how much nicer that must feel. And so it makes a big difference, and they look really nice, as I said. Tagging on to that, there's also pull-out counter fridges. So tall fridges can be difficult to reach upper shelves for individuals who are in wheelchairs or power chairs, or who might have other certain physical disabilities or physical disabilities. And so there's pull-out fridges and freezers that are like drawers that sit in that replace lower cabinets, and you just pull them out like where they're usually stacked drawer, they operate like drawers, and you just pull them out, either the top or the bottom one, and they're usually 2 fridges or 2 freezer drawers, and you can get one or the other probably too. And they help do things like make them more accessible for individuals again, which is really helpful. And there's painting steps with high contrast paint, which is an easy thing to do. Painting the front edge of each step with a bright strip of paint, and that helps individuals who are not who might be legally blind, even if it's temporarily, such as individuals who have cataracts, individuals who are mostly blind, which would classify them as legally blind, who can't see much or can see certain breadths of color, some individuals who, a laundry list of situations. And it's helpful because it identifies and makes it easier to see those steps in various light situations and helps keep individuals safer and reduce tripping, especially when paired with other benefits for stairs. Wider door frames, especially when paired with ramps, improves access for individuals with mobility difficulties and mobility issues or disabilities. And it makes a big difference for people to enter places, move through spaces. Not all door frames are created equal. I hate to break it to you. Anyone who's tried to move a sofa through a 2.5 foot, through like a narrow door, that's hard enough. Try moving a wheelchair or a power scooter through that kind of thing every day is going to be hard. Especially when you don't have when you have steps instead of a ramp. You're not going it's not going to be pleasant. I don't like to lean on that example, but it is a big physical barrier to enter and leave spaces that we need to talk about and we need to do something about. On top of that, there's adding sort of a more specialized design that's not necessarily universal design, but I think it should be, is quiet spaces, because everyone can benefit from a quiet space. It doesn't need to have sensory objects in it, but a space that is just built for being quiet. That's beneficial to everyone. I don't know anyone who couldn't benefit from a space that's just made for quiet. We all need it. Space to go and just let go of sound. It's beneficial to all of us, especially those who, like me, have autism and or other sensory sensitivities. It makes a difference. Get stressed about something, go sit in the quiet space. Are you religious and you need to spend some time praying, meditating, whatnot? Go sit in the quiet space. It's there for you. And universal design doesn't just stop at that initial or remodeled structural design. It is meant to be part of the initial design. That's the goal. Universal design to be in law to impact all new constructions so that new constructions can be used for the longest period of time and that people can live in place. Reducing impact on lives, reducing impact on things like Medicare, Medicaid, etc., so that we can do more with funds, etc., etc., etc. It also includes the incorporation of training, support, patience, empathy, community, and countless forms of communication, collaboration, and constant creativity to try and keep growing these things and be there for one another. It's necessary. These things don't work if we're not continually operating, growing, and using and implementing. So, a fun fact, fun for me, is that in addition to universal design, we finally get to talk about another little thing that I love. There's also choosing or implementing design elements that are beyond the universal design focus, that are focused themselves on specific people or subgroups that you're trying to accommodate. In other words, universal design can go on into specialized design, even if it's yourself. In other words, universal design is, universal, and specialized design is more focused. And I briefly mentioned this earlier. This can be having things like form-fit handles. So if you have 2 fingers on one hand, you could design handles for knobs or drawers in your house that are molded to your preferred hand. or your preferred grips, or your preferred limbs. If you prefer to open a drawer with your foot, because that's just how you want to do it, even if you have hands, there's nothing that says you can't, and if that's most comfortable for you, for any reason, that's specialized design. It can be sensory stimming wall decor. I briefly mentioned sensory objects in a quiet room. That's a form of specialized design based on object placement. It can also be appliances or devices built in your home to help treat or work with specific ailments. So in this case, call to mind, this is a more expensive one, and not one I have, and I don't ever picture myself having, but some people who have the money would get a sauna in their house to help with chronic muscle or joint difficulties. Again, that's a more expensive example. It is an example. Dimmable lights for photosensitivity. The options are pretty extensive and far more variable for specialized design than they are for universal design. And those are also things I'm going to cover on this channel, is how can you specialize your design and how can you do things like that for your family and for yourself to make spaces and places able to be lived in longer and more accessible so that you can live in place and so that it's not a stressful place for you. So some countries around the world have already started to incorporate universal design into their new construction codes and laws. And for those businesses that are leading the way in the United States, we've already seen how it impacts profit and return on investment compared to their competitors. We all want to have freedom, and universal design is freedom. Universal design is independence, and we don't need to sacrifice creativity in architectural design or decor or interior design to achieve it. It's helpful that alone is awesome, and the fact that it's helpful alone is beautiful. It can also look nice too, which is a bonus. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions or comments about universal design, how it can help or positively impact you or the world, please throw it down in the comments section. If you got something from this video, if this video meant something to you, please give it a like to help the algorithm. Please share it with anyone and everyone who you think might be interested in it. A word of mouth really is the best way to help. And me or anyone who does work like this, it makes a world of difference. Please hit subscribe to stay up to date with more information on family-based universal design, money-saving tips and tricks, advice on various things for individuals and families, friends, and others that you care about, who just being there for individuals and yourself when it comes to disabilities and varying abilities. Before we go, though, I want to let you know that being an individual with or who cares about someone with one or more disabilities of any kind has struggles. No disability is fully integrated into any of our societies of this world. Though some countries and places do best, there's always a struggle. There's always some kind of weight. If you're having a hard time, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, don't give up. Remember what matters to you. Remember who matters to you. You and your family and those you care about are loved. If for no other reason than I love you as my neighbor, all right? This world is a better place because you're here. All of you. Never forget that. You matter. You make a difference. All right? It's worth it. Stick around. I'll see you next time.